January 6th events, and here we are a couple of days ago watching Washington getting locked down. And of course, yesterday we had the impeachment, which I believe presented a sort of lone gunman theory that President Trump was responsible for all this. The lone gunman is, in this version, is the lone president. Looking at it as a military operation right from the very beginning, I'm talking about the orange hats and how it looks like 4th Psychological Operations Group, the group from Fort Bragg, is maybe the group behind all this.
And we saw the group form. We came down Pennsylvania Avenue and we saw the group of the orange hats form. They formed on this lawn area over here, on this grassy knoll over here, came down this street here, and then went through the gate there, over the first fence, then the second fence. You heard him say it. They're coming in.
And that was followed by a series of highly emotional diversions. We had Ashley Babbitt being shot and this news being spread throughout the crowd. And we saw the early leaks of the gory photos, and that sort of was, I think, to incite the crowd. And immediately we started talking about this as a diversion. Other guys with the hoodies and the sunglasses inside are taking the servers away. And I even talk about it here, where I said that 4th Psych Ops may be the ones who went and got this server. Talking about 4th Psych Ops, we talked about 4th Psych Ops going to Josh Hawley's house 2 days before. 4th Psych Ops may have gone to Portland. And then we followed it right up with a series of interviews with all the eyewitnesses. We went one after another through people who were actually there and had actual accounts of this sort of psychological operations that seemed to be occurring. And we collected the evidence. And even though we had all the evidence, we had the theory of what happened, the diversion with the Ashley murder, the removal of the server, etc., it's being dismissed again, of course, as conspiracy theory. And now we're back to the lone president theory, the lone gunman theory.
Because somehow things that I didn't understand, and we worked together for 45 minutes, and boom, things start getting a little more clear. And that's what we need, is good, honest information that we can do the right thing. Because the answer is McDuff would always do the right thing. The problem that everybody has in this country right now is nobody knows what the right thing really is, because of the obfuscation, the propaganda, and the lies that our major media is foisting upon everybody in this country.
Well, John, we showed a real brief video that I did this morning, a 2-minute video talking about psychological operations. And this is basically getting your enemy to really believe what you want them to believe rather than what really happened. And if you see the WMD, just take the first W off John's hat, the whole idea of Iraq having weapons of mass destruction as a precept or precedent for attacking Iraq would be a good example. So the military is very involved in these operations. And the operations, if you followed the series, is centered in Fort Bragg, in Fayetteville. The 4th Psychological Operations Group, you might be familiar with, Jeff Prather's old unit. Not saying everyone in these places has been compromised. You only need a couple of operators. The operators typically are disguised usually in bike clubs or motorcycle gangs and so forth. So there's other ways that you can disguise these people, but they're kind of always in hot standby around Fayetteville to go do these operations. We have the story now of this gal, Emily Rainey, bringing 100 operators to the Capitol. So we have evidence that 4th Psychological Operations did the operation, not Trump.
But I just want to lay the groundwork that this is standard operating procedure with the military, 4th Psych operations. And we can get into Pence going to the 10th Mountain Division on Sunday, where I believe the real operators are, the real infiltration is. We could talk about that later. But John, I just wanted to set this up. A lone gunman theory, the lone president theory. Trump's in the White House doing all this. He's responsible 100% for January 6th. There's that evidence. So this is so much like Kennedy versus lone gunman versus conspiracy. Or do we believe 4th Psych Ops? And I'm going to present information for both and let people make the decision, just like we're in a court of law.
So on the one hand, you have the theory that is basically pushed on the American people to be fact. That is that Donald Trump himself organized the assault on our Capitol, on our houses of Congress. And then on the other hand, you have this incredible array of facts that's based upon the investigation that you've been doing for 5 years that says, no, that's a con job. That's a ridiculous theory when you look at the facts. And so our job here is to somehow, in some very, very calm and believable way, to just lay out the facts. You've been there. I've been watching all the people. I've interviewed a dozen people that were there, and I'm convinced that this is not a President Trump operation to assault the Capitol. That would have been insane. So all of those people over on Capitol Hill that are, trashing the president right now, telling everybody that he's, cussing him all different ways from Sunday, as they say. Yeah. They're just playing along with the narrative. I think Cheryl Atkinson has written a new book now called The Smear, and that book is about this thing called the narrative, and the narrative is what replaces our love of facts. You have to love the narrative. This is straight out of Big Brother. And if you don't follow the narrative, then you're going to go on the list. And it's as bad as you could imagine from my point of view. I would love to keep on with the hopium and thinking, General McInerney and everything's going to happen. But no, I have to look at reality. And reality is, this country is no longer the democratic republic that we were told it was when we went through school. It's a new government. It's a new arrangement, and we are no longer citizens. We are now pawns or serfs or subjects, to put it in the way the nobility puts it.
Yeah, and John, you mentioned that the McInerney theory or the McInerney explanation of events, and we're absolutely as closely aligned with Ann Vandersteel and General McInerney as possible. We couldn't get it. We just did a show with her yesterday.
Yeah.
So we're not, and we're meeting with her more often than you see us. So I just want to let everyone know that our definition, and Jeffrey Prather, our definition of what happened versus what they say is almost incredibly the same. The only thing that's different is we're saying who is the last hand that gave the order. And that's what we're trying to do. And we ask you to look at the metadata and you make the decision. So Jeff used to be 4th Psych Ops. He says they run these operations. I did several shows at the White House with the BLM on the pavement there, where he said as much. He said that there would be a color revolution. They would use colored insignia to imitate the Trump folks. He said there would be impersonators. He said they would be assembled usually out of sight, ready to come in at the last minute. We got a tip that actually was occurring behind the One America News building. Addie, myself, and a great contributor down in Atlanta, Georgia Peach, walked down there and we showed it. We were right there when they started the F Antifa. Out of nowhere, there was no Antifa to be found. All of a sudden, these guys shout F Antifa. Now, what I'm saying is these operators were launched at 1 o'clock. Trump was not done with his speech yet. If Trump was running this operation, Trump would have been blinking his eyes in a special way or doing hand signals to order these guys to go in and get the server from Nancy, right? I say that Trump was delaying, and again, we have all the witness interviews. Trump was delaying so that the vote would go forward on the election. And he was going to call the senators out to their promises, which was, hey, look into this fraud. At least give me 4 hours. It was going to be 4 hours per state to make my case in the Senate. And that's why the person pulled the trigger and had the orange hats go through that barricade. That's why they pulled the trigger right at 1 o'clock. Now you're going to hear Proud Boys. The Proud Boys with Ali Alexander, again, in communication with him, were down at the Capitol at the time. The pictures you see of Ali Alexander in the orange hat and all the other orange hat, the Proud Boy guys, they didn't get to the Capitol by 1:15. This other crew came from behind, and they literally formed up on a grassy knoll, John. I mean, all you have to, if you've read anything about the Kennedy assassination, you've got this one too, because we have the Patsy in this with the girl getting killed. Again, all of a sudden, all these guys running out saying, girl was shot, creating rage in the crowd, psychological operations on the crowd. We have 10 different interviews now that we've recorded where all these psychological operations were being done on the crowd. People running out saying their eyes were maced. People, all of a sudden, cameras appear on platforms indicating pre-planning, kind of remind you of the pre-wiring of Building 7. Who pre-wires their buildings for demolition? You know, who does that? We had people running out saying, get them. We had people screaming, Jesus. You know, we had people yelling, charge. We had people saying, forward. You can hear it in all my videos. You can see the flags, and you can see all the psychological operations, you know, sort of into the breach, sort of a half lure speech. So this is what happened. And the wacky people that you see, the horn guy and the buffalo hat and all that, it's diversion. You want to divert your enemy's attention away from the guys with the sunglasses, wearing sunglasses. Who wears sunglasses inside the Capitol? Why do you need sunglasses inside the Capitol? It's pretty bright in there, right? They want, when you see the sunglasses and the hoodie and the mask and almost no visible skin, those are your operators. Those are the people who are brought in. Again, not speculation. 100 were bused from Fayetteville to Washington, D.C. They came in the night before under police escort. Under police escort. Now, whether those were the 100 operators or not, I'm just saying that there's a lot more evidence here that says it was a military operation. We've been talking about Petraeus. We've been talking about Kissinger. We've been talking about Steve Pachenik as the guy who was going to throw in their wacky story. Isn't that what we got? Isn't that what we got? Don't we have a snap impeachment? Doesn't this remind you of after Kennedy gets the headshot, Lyndon Johnson on the plane taking the oath of office with Jackie Kennedy, everyone in kind of a state of shock?
Except for the guy that's winking at LBJ saying, see what I mean? See what I told you?
Yeah, Valenti is in the back of the room, who took over the Hollywood Motion Picture Arts Union. And he's winking because he knows what happened. He's got the big smile because he knows that this is a psyop.
Yeah, the whole thing with that local Texas judge with the Bible and saying, you know, take the oath of office, that was all show.
Why was Jack Ruby in the Parkland Hospital 2 days before the shooting? These are things that, you know, the CIA doesn't want you to know. So we knew this day would come when we would shift from soft coups. We would shift from soft coups to hard coups. We knew we'd shift from soft coups to more, hey, we're gonna bring the 10th Mountain down to DC and cordon off the White House, and cordon off the Capitol. And that's what they're doing right now. And Trump, like I said, Pence will be up at the 10th Mountain on Sunday. So this is the hard coup. This is Petraeus. This is Kissinger. And Steve Pachenik will be coming out with a wacky throw and blaming Trump any minute now.
Yeah. Well, it's very sad, and I hardly even want to look at my social media anymore because all my friends are like so so into this Trump bashing. And I guess that's, what do you expect after got complete control of the media for our entire lives? We just didn't understand it. We did not know that Walter Cronkite was one of them. We know it now, but it's hard to believe when you've sat there as a young kid or a teenager and waited for Walter Cronkite to tell you, what the news was for today. And that's the way it is. And that was a mantra that was pumped into our minds. And that's the way it is this day. His beautiful resonant voice, his ominous Grease demeanor, he was an actor. He was there to sell the story. And now here we are it's like Walter Cronkite on steroids now, the whole media, everything. It just reminds me of, every time that a dictator comes along, a Napoleon comes along, they've prepared the ground by controlling the media, whether it's Hitler or the Confederacy with Jeff Davis or Napoleon or anyone you want to name. They have control of the media. And when they've got the people depending upon the media for what they think is news, then they've got people's brains in the palm of their hand. And it's just shocking and sad that these are intelligent, smart people that I know and I love, but I can't even engage with them. It's beyond tragic, George.
Well, the good news here is that we're all witnesses to this. We have about 12 people here. We're probably going to extend another week with our group here that was going to part tomorrow because we want to ride with Trump through the impeachment. It's going to cost a lot of money, but we're going to do it. And John, thank you for your contribution, your generous contribution before the show.
Guys, I want to make sure that let's just not just blow over this. I mean, George Webb has financed the Charette House for 2 weeks now. He's just decided to go another week, but he does need contributions. So, somebody that can support this with $100 or so, send it to George in his Patreon. And, if you can.
Neighborhood News Studio, Todd, who stayed with us, gave us $1,000.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So he
thank you, Todd.
So, I mean, these things are what makes the news. And here's why this is so important. It was important that we had a dozen people there so that we had the ability to collect all the testimonies. This is sort of like the Warren Commission. You're seeing the Warren Commission in real time right now. And we have the son, literally, of McDuff. Go back one generation, it's McDuff trying to get through the PSYOP, that's being run by Bissell and Angleton. It's scary, John, how eerie this is. But if you look at this situation, you've got everything. You've got the patsy with Alshi. I'm sure they told her, you're going to be the hero, right? Just like they told Oswald. And she gets put through that window and gets killed, right? They then bring forward, they have to have a hero cop that gets killed. So they take a guy who died of a heart attack after the attack and made him a victim of getting hit in the head with a fire extinguisher, supposedly at the Capitol. Later, we learned that it happened after that. Somebody else commits suicide. So we're having all those suicides now that have come out of this. People let people in the gate. The previous Capitol Police chief said this would never happen. Request after request after request was not made. This Capitol Police chief said no one made any requests. How does the FBI the day before get a report that 4 terrorist groups of 25 people each, kind of sounds like military, who makes their bike gangs always 25, but anyway, they got 4 terrorist groups are meeting up. They all have 25 people, right? And the FBI, what do? They forward that email to the Capitol Police. Forward the email. The Capitol Police say we never got it because it sat in an email box. Now let's see. This is the most important thing since 9/11. The one before that is the Kennedy assassination. And you sent an email. Does this remind you of the DNC, the hacking of the DNC server for 9 months? And Brian Hawkins couldn't get off his duff and go down and visit the DNC and say, hey, you're being hacked. Yeah, it does sound a lot like that. Why? Because they were dangling Hillary's emails to all the Bernie people through the primaries. And when the Bernie operation was over and you no longer needed Seth Rich, and now we'll start dangling those same emails to Trump. So the beautiful thing about this, John, is McDuff prepared us for this moment. We were ready right there with all the cameras for it. We said, they're going to do the swap here. They're going to say the Proud Boys, went through this barricade, and Trump knew it. Trump kept talking at 1 o'clock. Ali couldn't leave with the Proud Boys, right? I'm not saying Ali's in any way involved in this. Ali didn't know that they were going to do the swap, with the fourth PSYOP guys. They didn't make it in time. The pictures you're seeing of Ali walking down don't coincide with the time the Proud Boys hit. The meth heads hit the gate. See how there's so few people there? Addie was there. Georgia Peach was there. We were all there to record it. Ann was there. Okay. They had a disjoint. They had a disjointedness here in the operation because Trump waited. Trump kept going on. Thank you, Agent Orange. Yeah, Agent Orange. This is about orange agents.
So someone mentioned, it was Harry that mentioned a minute ago. It's his Clockwork Orange. This is the American people sitting in that chair with their eyes being propped open, being forced to watch a contrived event to convince them that something is actually true. This is Clockwork Orange being played on every mind that watches a television.
And you may remember me going on InfoWars in 2017 saying the Clockwork Orange was written by Steve Pieczenik. And Steve Pieczenik went on InfoWars and said, I didn't write Clockwork Orange, you dumbass. And I said, Steve, you didn't listen. You wrote a Clockwork Orange. You wrote a, because you do Clockwork Oranges every time you do the PSYOPs for a country overthrow. You didn't listen. I didn't say the Clockwork Orange. I said a Clockwork Orange. And this, I don't want to say this is Steve's Clockwork Orange until he says it's Trump's fault. As soon as he says it's Trump's fault and Trump planned it, I know it's Steve's Clockwork Orange. Not until. But John, you nailed it. This literally down to the orange hats. This was a Clockwork Orange. And the problem was the clock was off by 15 minutes. And that's going to be the vital link. It's almost like if the Kennedy limousine had somehow been 15 minutes ahead of Lyndon Johnson, right? And Lyndon Johnson would have got shot, Yeah. It's disjointed enough, but this stuff requires precision timing, and they were off 15 minutes.
Like the elevator man sent up the umbrella man.
Oh,
the
yeah.
Umbrella man opened his bumper chute a little, 15 minutes early. Boom, boom, boom. Wait a minute. There was nobody there to shoot.
Yeah. And this has everything, all the makings of the grassy knoll, and as well, because you may remember E. Howard Hunt and Frank Sturgis and Rivera and all those guys over there at the grassy knoll, and the bums, carrying the weapons out and so forth. Well, this has the guys, we have our own E. Howard Hunt and our own Sturgis in this one as well, because those are the people carrying the servers out. You say, well, George, why would David Petraeus want to go in, send in his group to go in and get his server for his covert operations? Because Trump has about 10 days to declassify. Now only 4 or 5 days now. How many? I forgot what date it is. We've been working around the clock. But Trump has very little time to declassify. That's why they needed to go get that server. This covert operations server with those Petraeus CENTCOM Blackberries have been running these operations since Fast and Furious in 2009. And they did Libya, they did Syria, they did Sudan, they did Yemen, then they did the Iran nuclear deal. They ran the op on Trump in 2016, Crossfire Razor, Crossfire Hurricane. They did all the soft coups up into the impeachment last time, which was a soft impeachment. This is a hard impeachment. This is a snap impeachment. They may as well have shot Trump because this is an assassination.
You said something very similar the night of the of the drops, the big ballot drops, the day, the early morning after the election was supposedly over. And you called that a Kennedy headshot. And I thought, George, that's a long stretch. I'm not sure I can buy that analogy, but now it's proving to be true.
Yeah. Well, now remind everyone, just sit back for a second and think how close my version of what happened is to Jeff Prather's and Ann Vandersteel's. They say it was the good guys sent by a military guy through the barricades to go in and get the servers in order to Trump running the operation. I say it was an operation run against Trump, but we agree that it's 4th Special Ops. We agree that there's operators in other areas like Fort Drum with 10th Mountain, operators in the Fayetteville area, various bike gangs, operators that you can draw on in the South to send up. So we agree on all those things. The only thing we disagree is who ordered the op, Petraeus or Trump. And you see how Trump, and so I love Jeff and I love Ann because they got it. They nailed it. And that's why I'm associating with them and talking with them and comparing notes with them all the time. And sometimes I'm wrong and it is Trump's hand that ordered it. And sometimes they're wrong and it is Petraeus's hand. But I think you see this, how quick this snap impeachment is happening. I don't think Trump would run a snap impeachment against himself. Now, what McInerney says, and he's a 3-star, so, and General Valley is a 2-star, they're saying, no, this is exactly why they went in and got the servers. Either way, we're all in violent agreement that this is a psych op from the start. It's a Clockwork Orange from the start to the end.
George, a little while ago, you were mentioning how amazing these events are and how they reflect the events of my father's lifetime. And I would just add that your decision to extend the charrette gives us now the opportunity to spend the time with a dozen or so people that we have here, sorting through all of my records that I've kept over the years. And something symbolic happened the other day, and I'd like to share that. Over the years, George, since I moved into a place up in Oxon Hill that later became part of National Harbor, I became aware, well, there was people breaking into my house, but they wouldn't steal things that were monetarily valuable. They would steal things that it's clear to me in hindsight were there to take away my memories of my father. For instance, I had a little wooden box that he had gotten in Shanghai, China. And it was one of those trick boxes. You had to slide the panels out and find the key and open it up. And it was, as a child, your dad giving you this to play with was like, we would say, please, can we get the Shanghai box out, Dad, And he had his coin collection in there. Well, they snatched it, Other things that they've snatched over the years were my grandmother's music collection. I have 2 of her songs, but she had a whole box of songs that she had put together, and her diary. And they stole all of my collections of Hallmark Christmas cards from my grandmother. That I had 4 boxes of these with the classic ones with the raised, anyway, all of these things. Then they took a box from me that had my dad's USS Nashville cruise book in it, the picture book that they gave out to everybody at the end of the war. They took his Columbia University Midshipman School Side Boy, which the 10th class of the Columbia Midshipman School, there's a publication called Side Boy that each of the classes was issued like a yearbook. And they took that. It has a number of great photos in it of my dad as the regimental commander with his uniform. And I mean, it was sentimental,
sure,
but also useful. But when the last tranche of stuff was taken, I could no longer find my O'Loughlin family Bible. And for the past 10 or 12 years, I've been thinking that they snatched it, they got it. But when Andy and Dave were here and setting up, and they decided to pick up that old grandfather clock that's over there, and they opened it, and inside it, they found that old O'Loughlin Bible from Ireland.
Wow.
And it was my decision at the time that my house was getting ransacked enough that I needed to hide that Bible, and I forgot where I hid it. So I thought it was gone, and then there it is. It came back into my hands yesterday, and I think that's symbolic of the fact that they took a lot of stuff, but I've still got reams and reams of stuff that are going to tell my dad's story, and there's nothing they can do about it now.
And we are going about it, John. That's a beautiful story, and we are going about the process of documenting and numbering everything. And so we are going to have electronic copies of all this stuff. It's a huge task. Let me just tell you, it is full of documents. It reminds me so much of this other professor at James Madison who has all the De Mohrenschildt papers. And I'd love to send Annie and Addie over there and hit those, and photo those. And I think the guy's written a book, so he might be a little bit further ahead of him on us, but we definitely want to, John definitely is going to publish this, and we want Addie and Andy to be the key guys. So ask FJ about the name for the orange hats. Tell him I sent you.
About group name of orange hats.
Well, I think you're talking about the motorcycle gang in Fayetteville, and I know you don't mean the Proud Boys, because that was the cover group. I think they wanted that Clockwork Orange timing to be a little bit better, so it looked like the Proud Boys were being joined by the let's just call them Hell's Angels Fayetteville, because they look like Hell's Angels Fayetteville. But regarding your story, John, a lot of times mementos can be messages to the future. Knowing that you will go back and look at those Christmas cards someday, knowing you'll go back like now, going back and looking at the mementos, the midshipman's books, we're better to leave you messages for the future, right? And McDuff, I've already seen this. He's a master of this. He'll leave a little bit here and a little bit there. The Chinese box, what FBI guy going through, or CIA guy going through all your dad's stuff is going to take the Chinese Shanghai box? He's only going to take it if he thinks he put something in there that's, hey, Oswald, CIA, 1957, the little piece of paper. I worked Bay of Pigs, 1961 for Kennedy. Oswald and Ruby were in it. Those are the types of mind-altering, facts that could be secreted in those types of things. So I think there's a great logic. Can you remember they went through, I can't remember who Kennedy was having the affair with over by Georgetown, I think. But they took her diary. Len Bracken does a great book about this, destroying everything, because they were thinking he's using these proxies as the way of getting out messages to his team. So we're the public Trump team, public intelligence team. But back then you didn't have this YouTube. And so you had to kind of have emissaries or proxies. So I see the logic. It's horrible. It's disgusting. But maybe that Irish Bible is McDuff's Banquo's ghost. I always said when we first named McDuff, I said, this is going to be Banquo's ghost coming back at the deep state. Banquo is the spirit that comes back to haunt Macbeth for murdering the father of the prince, right? And you played that character, I think. I'm not sure.
I've been in it. Verdi's opera Macbeth is just such a classic one. The star of that one, of course, is Desdemona. The soprano, but I had a small role, the doctor, and it's a fun role. But no, I wasn't the star of that show.
Well, I think of the Irish Bible and saying, look at Brennan. Look at Paul Whelan having the Irish passport, recruiting all these Rockefeller and Greenberg Russians to come in and do all their different operations, election operations. Look at the billionaire over there that was running all the operations for the cellular company in Haiti. And I still say they're using Ireland as well, in Dublin. I can think of a few journalists that come from Dublin, actually, but there's universities there that fed into, I can't remember the university right now, maybe it's University of Queensland, but that fed into the Link University of George Papadopoulos, the whole spy club for getting Trump surveillance, the whole Crossfire Hurricane spy club, spy kids. So, and somebody look up the link between Link University that linked all these spy universities and I think it's University of Dublin, I want to say, but maybe just Trump, he didn't think of it. McDuff didn't think of it, but isn't it sweet justice that the Bible is found now? Yeah. And we know it's Brennan, and we know it's guys like Paul Whelan that recruited these operatives. I think that's beautiful. I love that. I wanted to go to Ireland for just this reason, but we can't, obviously, now that we got a coup going, right as we're talking.
Andy, reach inside the clock there and get that Bible out of there. I'm going to show that to folks. And while Andy's doing that, I just have to share one other thing that they did, because it is so unbelievably despicable that I kind of don't like to talk about it. I like to bury it in my, we keep things buried, but it's coming out now. And here's the thing. They took the guest book from my father's funeral.
Makes total sense.
So that I wouldn't be able to get in touch with, to look up who was at the funeral in hindsight. They took, George, the flag off of his coffin. They took the flag that was folded up in a triangle, then handed to the widow.
Yeah.
They took that flag from me. And, that just, if you think there's any feeling, any empathy, any humanity to these people, let that story resonate in your mind, because that's who they are.
Yeah, to me, it makes total sense to the guest book. I mean, I think these letters to, conciliatory letters or consolation letters,
which I do have some
sympathy letters, are going to be a treasure trove.
Yeah.
But Angleton would certainly not want that guest book floating around. It would be a treasure trove itself.
There's the ancient Bible. It is signed on the front of it by Hannah Kelleher, the lady whose obituary I located about a month ago. And she brought this Bible from Ireland, and in the United States, she and my great-great-grandfather, Ross Henry O'Loughlin, got married. And in the back of the Bible is all of the births recorded in handwriting. I don't think you can see it, but in the back there, it's all of my ancestors on the O'Loughlin family are all listed with their dates of birth and death. So this was a treasure that I thought I'd lost, and it came back to me yesterday by virtue of the efforts that the people here at the Charette are making. And I'm a little bit numb still. I'm not like celebrating or anything, but I'm like, wow, we're in the middle of a process that is huge, absolutely huge. And it's not just about you and me or the 12 people here. No. This is big stuff.
Yeah, it really is. We call it the treasure room, the white room, privately amongst each other, because we didn't want to tip off the fact that we thought there would be a lot of clues in the room. But now we're pulling them out. So we have to kind of own up that these are going to be, wouldn't it be great if it just said Brennan's going to do it? We'd open it up and say Gina Haspel's going to put together a dossier on Trump that's really about Hillary, and they're projecting. And he almost did, John. He almost did with how he went about things. If you look at, for instance, him going and meeting with anything McDuff would have written. If I was Angleton and I was sending a proxy over to steal it, I would have gotten rid of anything he would have written.
Mm-hmm.
Any scrawl, any message, anything, I would have destroyed it. Anything he typed, I would have destroyed it.
I got one thing, which I'm not going to tell you what it is yet because it's very personal, but I knew they were going to take it. So I made a Xerox copy of it, and they did take it. but I still got the copy.
Makes total sense. I can't remember the autobiography or the and Angleton, I think personally, Len was telling me this story over in Georgetown. He actually personally went over and was it Strobe Talbot? It was right out of the gal who ran American University, Burwell. And when Susan Rice was up there and bringing all the Rockefeller and Greenberg Russians in to spy on Trump, to get surveillance on everybody in the Trump camp. And she goes back and destroyed the diary of, the guy from Arkansas. All of a sudden I can't remember his name, in Fort Marcy Park. That guy. It reminds you that they sent a similar henchman, and it wasn't. They sent a similar henchman in to get this diary. Of course, Marilyn Monroe died. All of Kennedy's lovers seemed to, kind of die early deaths, and I cannot remember. Oh, Lee Stranahan was telling me who went. I knocked. I'm sorry. Lee Stranahan was telling me who went in and got that. But this is a common thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is a common thing where Angleton left no stone unturned as far as the Operation Cleanup. So he ran an operation to kill the president of the United States, right? So they didn't want to do that this time. They thought, hey, we can do this with a hard coup. We don't have to kill him. And they came one step short. And again, I pray to God that Ann is right. I pray to God that Jeff Prather is right.
Me too. So do I.
I mean, that would make me happy beyond, but I can't let the getaway car get away either. I got to start snapping the pictures so that we have it if it doesn't turn out to be. I love those guys. So people are trying to make it into a competition between me and Ann and me and Jeff. We're in total agreement. The only thing is I say who pressed the button.
I have, I've been thinking, you probably got an email from Professor Hamamoto yesterday in which he gave us a bunch of material on Project Camelot. And I hadn't heard of Project Camelot before. Of course, the idea that they created this Camelot myth around the White House, with Seymour Hersh and all of that myth may have been to cover up the real Project Camelot, which is another one of these deep state CIA operations. And I'm going to look forward to, because tonight we have our trio with Professor Hamamoto. So we'll talk about that and a number of other things. It's just such a thrill to have Professor Hamamoto with us.
Oh yeah,
and,
he's wonderful. He's amazing.
I mean, you and I we have our perspectives and we're different in many ways, but to add Professor Hamamoto is just like adding the spice to the meal. It makes it so interesting and exciting for me.
The third leg of the stool, yeah, absolutely. Dr. Hamamoto, I thought Camelot. I haven't read the piece he sends me.
We haven't had a chance to study it yet, but I looked at enough of it to see that there's a lot there.
Well, let me describe what I think it is, and you tell me where I go wrong. I thought it was the cover code word for Operation 35, which is the plan to kill Kennedy. Now they had repurposed Operation Mongoose and did the planning out of JM Webb at the base in Miami. Am I wrong?
I will have to wait until I've studied it all first, but there is a Wikipedia article. It's pretty accessible and spells out the idea, because it was an official operation of the CIA that was supposedly canceled in 1965, but has continued. It's something to spend a little time with, and of course, without having that time, we can't get up to speed. But by tonight, I'm going to read those things.
Well, and think like McDuff, right? What would McDuff do? Wouldn't you give an honorarium to your secret team to then use that special access program again and again and again and keep reusing it? Sort of like Fast and Furious. You got all these weapons and you're shipping weapons at the border. Wouldn't you use that to then launch covert operations in Syria, Libya, Sudan, Yemen? I mean, you've got an operation. It's officially sanctioned. And the beauty is everyone else in the military thinks it's a legit operation.
I tell you what, Andy, can you go to Wikipedia and look and go to the page that's called Project Camelot? Because
Operation Camelot, right?
No, Project.
Oh, Project. Okay.
I think it's Uh-oh, I'm sorry, I might have messed it up. I think it's Project Camelot. Yeah, it is.
Okay.
And look at the Wikipedia page. And what it is, George, is it's a project of psychologically analyzing and controlling other countries so that you would use it. It's, in other words, I think it's probably the basis of your fourth PSYOP operations that are happening today. That's why I've found it to be so compelling.
Methods for predicting and influencing social change and internal war potential.
Yeah.
Internal war. Yeah.
So planning coups, basically. These are the psyops for coups. Well, that's pretty appropriate today to bring that one up. Yeah, of course, Doctor would, he takes us right to the source material. He's done this time and time again. Please subscribe to his channel.
Professor Hamamoto on YouTube.
He's a true genius. He's a research genius.
And his book, Servitors, is just still blows my mind.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, if you just, a very similar op to this is an operation he describes with 100 well, it wasn't MI6 then, but 100 British intelligence agents. I think it was like 10 British intelligence agents and 90 operatives did the coup and got rid of the Ming dynasty, right? Or one of the dynasties. And I can't remember it now, but it was just like, he just describes it in two pages and moves on. I mean, every page is like that. But I remember the number 100. Isn't it great to have Andy bring all his stuff up? Yeah,
it's right there.
We don't have to add the graphics later. Oh my gosh,
it's incredible. I've been working solo now for over 2 years, George, and this is a different ball game. I can't be. I can just sit here and share my thoughts with you and know that Andy's there to reinforce them with graphics and keep an eye on the chat, and also keep our faces framed properly, the light right, the sound right. It's tremendous.
Yeah, it really is. Well, and Andy comes up with new graphics every day and the logos in the corner and so forth to watermark your work, John, because plus Andy's also doing what I call the multi-warhead thing. He's sending this out to 8 different streaming services. So he's giving us the operational security. I mean, they play whack-a-mole with us, trying to constantly destroy this truth. And when it goes out to 8 different places, it just makes their work a lot harder, which I love. Now, what do you think about this second Bio-Patriot Act? The first Patriot Act ended, I believe, in March, sometime 2020. And this may be, another play. Maybe that Tennessee was priming us to say white supremacists, they blow things up. White supremacists, they blow things up. This reminds me of the guy Deep Uranium who was trying to get people to blow things up, right? That gets people to prime their minds for this. Then they see, now they're trying to paint everybody as a white supremacist that went to, even though, we're not at all. Aaron Adler just gave 1,000 to the orphanage in Ghana. So now do you think another explosion like Lebanon, and then Joe Biden declares martial law? I mean, they want this Patriot Act. And
this is consistent with what Harley Schlanger is saying, is that the time is ripe for another 9/11, mainly because of the banks, because the banks are now at a point where they don't have any more sources to finance their activity. They've already financed everything that can be financed, and in order to make their payments on the loans, they've got to have a big infusion of capital. Where do they get their money from? The arms industry. So to create a terrorist event is the perfect solution that they've tried and used on us many times. You've got to increase the military budget, which means, unfortunately, we're going to have to cut your Social Security. I'm sorry, Grandma. We're going to have to cut all of the great social programs that we were going to give you, nod, nod, wink, wink, because we've got to put it into military, because obviously there is this huge terrorist threat, like George W. standing on the pile saying, the people that brought down these mountains are going to hear, these buildings are going to hear from us. And everybody, yay, that's great. So yeah, that means that we are now going to finance another level of incredible military industrial complex spending. Well, and how do they get them to do it? it's always a big terrorist event.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think that we're being primed here. The disgraceful behavior that I saw yesterday by the House of Representative Republicans, which was, hey, we're going to vote against the president. I'm going to say, the president was the lone gunman on January 6th. First of all, we proved that all the theatrics were happening inside the Capitol. We had a couple of guys, a trio of guys doing the Trump false flag, smashing the window at strategic points right in front of the camera platforms, by the way, that CNN had set up. So we had a little bit of outside operations, but everything else has been hearsay now later on. All the evidence, the real witnesses that we've recorded have all said it was festive. They all remember singing the national anthem. They all remember people trading stories. Oh, where are you from? Or where are you from? They're trading stories of Trump rallies they went to that were all pleasant. None of these events. This is why this does not have the signature of a Trump thing. And they're trying to make this out to be a Trump coup.
I think the biggest mistake they're making is to take those agents, whatever you want to call them, like the guy with the buffalo helmet, and calling them Trump supporters, because they're not. There's no way that these clowns represent anything about MAGA or the good people that went to the Capitol that day.
I love rodeo clowns, though, because the rodeo clowns tell me I'm looking in the wrong place. Whenever you're the bull, they want you to look at the rodeo clown. That tells me that the servers are going out the steps of the Capitol, and we were so trained in this that there was a whole bunch of people inside that there were the MAGA folks that did go in, that got sucked into the excitement. They filmed them and said, those guys, they're the Antifa. And the literal response of the two guys wearing sunglasses inside with all the pregnant servers was, we're not Antifa today.
We're not here as Antifa.
Today.
Yeah.
Meaning today we're playing Trump people. Tomorrow we might have to play Antifa people. And if you look at the orange hats 2 days before intimidating Josh Hawley, the Senator Josh Hawley, who said he was going to vote for the investigation, you see the same orange hats. You see the same intimidation tactics. You see him surrounding the house. You see when they punched a hole in his door, right? They almost invaded his house, right? All these things to intimidate the people who were going to vote. And as soon as they knew for sure who was going to vote for the election, evidence, presenting the election evidence, that's when they called the operation. And Addie Ads was telling me, well, I think I'm going to, after Friday on the 15th, I'm going to go to Atlanta and help build a studio in Atlanta because some folks want to do a news hour down there. And I said, Addie, this is 9/11. The only difference is you were 4 or 3 the last time. And now this one, you were right in the middle of it. It would be like, in order to have an equivalence here, you would actually have to be sitting on the 103rd floor at Cantor Fitzgerald, watching the plane come at you. That's where you were in history, right? This is going to be your life now. People are going to ask you for the rest of your life where you were. And you were going to say, hey, I was reporting on it right in the middle, and we had gotten a tip that it was going to be these guys, right? That's why we had to extend this thing a week. It's twofold. One is to learn more about McDuff so we can be better McDuffs. But the other one is, this is a moment in history that must be recorded. It's like I said, it's like a 9/11 commission, but we already were running it. We already had everybody in place. Both the 9/11 commission and the Warren Commission were put in after the initial attempts to say we're not going to, it's Lee Harvey Oswald did it. The 20 hijackers did it. Believe that. Both of those commissions were put in years later, or about a year later, after public pressure. Hoover had that conversation with Johnson and said, we can't have a circus in the Congress. We have to have an independent commission, right? So that's what you're seeing here is our investigation is a true investigation, and there's no wait. We were there before the event occurred through some good tips. So that's why we went another week, in addition to doing the McDuff stuff.
This is the second extension.
Yeah, this is the second one. Yeah,
and George, you're always doing things. You're not somebody that sits in the basement and cogitates about, here's my latest theory, that you're out there in the streets, you're out there with other people, and you're recording, and you've done a great job of recording the individual testimony of the folks here with Team W that have gone downtown with you, and the observations of eyewitnesses. As we've often talked about, the quality of a witness depends upon three things: the ability to observe, the ability to remember, and the ability to relate. Mm-hmm. And the way to make sure that your witnesses are effective when the trial comes is to record them in advance, to have them approved. Yes, this is my words. This is what I said. And then when they get on the witness stand and they're nervous and everything, and they say, I can't remember, then you have right there the document, and you can say, does this refresh your recollection? And they look at it and they say, oh yeah, that's right. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah. It's amazing. I showed John, he hasn't watched the whole thing yet, but I showed this Yuri Nasenko video, Yuri Nasenko KGB. And we know McDuff worked with 2 defectors. We don't know which 2. But there's 3 to choose from, so it's going to be fun. So Nosenko is relating things, and the McDuff sort of character in the story says, well, naturally, when you're trying to do recollections and you're asked over a 4-year period of time where he was in prison here in Maryland, you're going to get slight differences as you recall things a little differently. Yeah. And I thought that was interesting that you taught me that about the witnesses, and then the McDuff character says that in the movie. And then the other thing is, this also was one of those things where we don't just have one Zapruder film. Mm-hmm. We have thousands of Zapruder films. We just have to focus in on not the rodeo clowns. There's all this effort and energy, focusing people on the rodeo clowns. Yeah. You can take 1 million pictures of the rodeo clowns and never get the answer. Right? You have to focus in on the guys wearing sunglasses in the Congress. Go through all the videos and send us anything where you see somebody in sunglasses inside. Okay. It wasn't that bright a day. It was overcast and cloudy. We were all there. Mm-hmm. We didn't need sunglasses. I normally wear sunglasses because I got photosensitive eyes. I didn't have to wear them that day. So this is where the witnesses to history, it was actually real overcast. It had rained and sleeted the day before. It was so overcast, right? There was no need for sunglasses. Aaron Adler, you just put that up, Andy. You just put up Blueprint for Revolution. Aaron Adler sent us all these books, Blueprint for Revolution, and said it'll be a group of people that take the color revolution of the group that you've developed politically to do the head knocking. Those are going to be the ones that go through the barricades. This is from Blueprint from Revolution, before it ever happened, 3 weeks before. So I was looking for guys putting on orange hats when we were walking down, literally, Independence Avenue. And you wouldn't have believed it, John, when I saw them, all these biker guys put orange hats on. I go, oh my God, it's coming true. That's why I'm saying orange hats immediately. A minute later when they go after the barricades. And I'm telling you, they didn't wait 1 second before they got those hats on. They had that last drag of the cigarette, like they were about ready to go rumble, burned the whole cigarette with one last drag, and they all flipped the cigarette, and they were like, okay, those were not Proud Boys. Those are not Proud Boys. Those guys were not with Ali Alexander.
Well, the other thing about that book is it's written by a Serbian, right? Folks are not familiar with the book, and I wasn't until I saw it on the table at the Charette House, and I picked it up and said, wow, is that the guy that was running Oddpore?
Yes, and Canvas, and Gene Sharp was his mentor in Boston, where Peter Strzok worked. Yeah, that's the guy who did the election operations. That's the same place that Oddpore and Canvas share a building with Dominion Voting. Share 51 programmers in the same building.
What would you, if you had like 1 minute with one congressman that might have an open mind, that you wanted to change his mind from, being anti-Trump, what would be the most powerful piece of evidence that you could offer to that congressman to say, look at this, you can't deny this. This shows that you're wrong.
Well, I think it's hard to do that, switch-o, change-o, but you can ask a question and then at least open it up to questions. And if Trump was running this, Mr. Congressman, why did they take his phone? Right?
They took his phone?
Yeah. So the phone, the Twitter phone, if you will, normally is in the possession of Trump, right? But when he makes speeches and so forth, it's kept near the Oval Office, near the chief of staff of the Oval Office. And it changes like the officer of a day on a ship. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the person who had the phone, and Trump will come out and verify this, hopefully soon, was Mike Pence's assistant chief of staff who had the phone. Okay. Now you remember Keith Kellogg, who ran the first operation against Trump? You remember the Five Eyes guys? Remember that was Keith Kellogg? He's the national security advisor for Mike Pence, right? He had the phone and he said he was locked out of the White House. Trump was looking for the phone. Trump doesn't want to publicize this. I'm not kidding. Trump was looking around the Oval Office. Where's my phone? And he could. Where is he? Where is he? Well, they said he was locked out of the White House. He was. Mm-hmm. They told the Secret Service to lock out Trump's chief of staff. And I'm getting into ground here where I'm going to give up sources, but I'll just say that Trump can prove this out. Now, why did they do that? Because they wanted to show Trump watching this on the television.
Right. They wanted him to instead of being, controlling the crowd, to be an observer on the television.
But make it look like he was orchestrating the events. But Mr. Congressman, why would you take away Trump's phone? Mm-hmm. Why would you take the commander's bullhorn or his shofar away from him during the battle? That's like taking away Petraeus's communications or MacArthur's communications during the invasion of Leyte Gulf. Makes no sense whatsoever. If Trump was running the op, why did they take his phone? Donald Trump knows that he did not have his phone for 1 hour and a half.
Lego Men is in the subtitle of Blueprint for Revolution. Professor Hamamoto is with us, George.
Oh, yeah. I noticed that immediately when I saw the book. I said, oh, man, Dr. Hamamoto was way ahead on this one.
Absolutely.
Dr. Hamamoto predicted the ritual killing. Now, Ashley, a lot of times when you run these ops and some of these darker, and they do have this kind of creepy Knights of Malta, stinky robe, occult, there is that angle that we still have in our military. Not very many guys, but there's a few. And they always do a ritual killing in these operations. That way, everyone is a part of the conspiracy, and we're all felony murder rule. We're all conspirators. Mm-hmm. If we all knew somebody was going to be killed, and we're going to put Ashley through as the suicide rabbit, she had an email with the title "Suicide Rabbit." Okay, when she was in Michigan, if we know we're going to put her through as
what?
I published it. It's out there. You can watch it. She had
an email.
Suicide Rabbit. You put the suicide rabbit through the door, so we don't have to be in league with the guy who shoots her.
It's like the guy, was holding his handgun, and it's very obvious that he was holding the handgun, waiting for the head to enter the field of fire.
We poked the suicide rabbit through. The cop didn't know. They just knew that anybody who comes through that window, you shoot them. And that'll stop everybody. It'll stop everybody in their tracks. So Dr. Hamamoto, literally on the show, on our Thursday night show, predicted a ritual killing in the coup. Right?
Okay.
That was our show. We did it.
Forgive me, I don't have a present recollection, yeah. but we could look at the show, Andy, and I would have recollection recorded.
There you go. Well, ask Andy, bring up Dr. Hamamoto right now and just see if he confirms that. But he predicted in these type of operations, when you do a hard coup, not soft coups, but when you do a hard coup, you in order to assure everyone in a code of silence, a blood bond, you do a ritual killing. And he predicted that. And this is where his book is going with the occult and this dark thread through our joint chiefs and politics and so forth. And I'm not an expert in that. Peter Duke is working on that, and Dr. Hamamoto and others.
Yeah, it's part of it. To me, I also have spent my time, studying the occult and the David Icke and all of the people that have spent their careers, telling that story. And while I can't say I believe everything that's said in those things, I do believe that there is it's not just smoke, there is fire there. And these folks are following ritualistic behavior in many instances and using that numerology, as Christine Lagarde famously said, I'm going to test your numerology skills.
Yeah. And I always say that's other people's expertise, and I distance myself from it. But sometimes I think the gematria and all that is kind of a throw to get people, thinking about why the person who commits suicide. The guy who went in and has been charged from Atlanta, he's got a name, another three, thing name.
Yeah.
It's something Quincy something, like John Quincy Adams, that type of thing. And he supposedly commits suicide because he's so distraught over being arrested and he doesn't want to go to jail.
Right. Yeah. Have you looked into that guy?
I have looked into him. And again, it's always the same story. Happy guy, mild-mannered guy, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say this. The triplane. You remember the triplane in World War I? Those old triplanes.
Yeah, the Red Baron.
Yeah,
Snoopy and the Red Baron. It's one of my favorite songs.
Yeah, the Fokker. You remember the Fokker? And Dr. Hamamoto sang this song. Hang on, Sloopy, right? Hang on, Snoopy, right? But anyway, it flies better. These stories fly better with three names: Lee Harvey Oswald, Anthony Quinn. I can't remember.
James Earl Ray. They always fly better. And so I always call them the Fokkers because they fly better with three names. People remember them more. Oh, yeah, the one guy who went in. Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to create a confession myth. They're trying to create a confession myth. These people who were maddening and going into supposedly kidnap Nancy Pelosi, fake, now are having a contrition moment. And in their moment of absolution, they decide to commit suicide. That's the narrative that they want you to believe, right? So let's make sure we give it three wings. Let's make sure we give it three names, right? And that's how the Fokkers fly. And so anyway, I know we're over time. But let me just make one suggestion that occurred to me during the show. And Norman Smith triggered it in me. He said he's going to write down his observations and send them, and his photos, and send them to us. And I say this: if you were there, if you're one of the 2 million people, and you want to make sure that your testimony is valuable, write it down, and then go to a notary public and have the notary public notarize your affidavit. It usually costs about $1 for somebody to put their notary seal on something, but that could be the answer, because if 5 years from now you're on the witness stand trying to remember something, you've got that affidavit that you wrote down contemporaneously with the event. You will not be discredited by opposing counsel if you have preserved your memory, your observation, and your recollections at the contemporaneous time, and not have to rely on 5 years of memory.
Well, the group we have,
you could do that. Everybody can do that.
That's awesome. And photographic evidence is even better. And we had some people with GoPros that filmed the entire event. So make us aware of people who have those GoPros, because again, terabytes on the rodeo clowns, not going to do anything. 1 megabyte on the guys with glasses on very cloudy days inside the Capitol, fully lit Capitol, is going to be the key to the test. That's going to be the answer to the test. 1,000
affidavits, 10,000 affidavits, 100,000 affidavits. You bring them in a great big box full of affidavits, and then so when their side has their clown witness that gets up there and says everything David Petraeus wants him to say, then you start opening the box and you say, well, okay, let's spend a little while with people that were actually there and had their observations. And we're going to open this box and the next box and the next box and the next box. Then we'll have somebody carry in a hand truck full of more boxes, and we will completely overwhelm them with truth.
Well, this is you're getting a little bit of a peek behind the scenes here with McDuff kind of giving me the theatrics training for the courtroom. And, F. Lee Bailey used to put a small metal wire in his cigars, and he would smoke them down to almost the nubbins, and it would create this incredibly long ash. And the jury would all be looking at when would the ash going to fall, completely not paying attention to the opposing counsel.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to be the great McDuff, where he pulls out, well, I want to call another witness, sort of like Atticus Finch. I want to call another witness, and I just Your Honor, may I have a moment, and then just start counting out the hundreds and hundreds of affidavits, and just I think number 341. Let's jump from number 18 to number 341. One of those kind of devices where it shows you've got the stacks and stacks. And then it wouldn't be bad to have a pratfall, the wheeling in the cart, a double cart, with a huge thing. And then slip and fall, to show how heavy these things are. There's so many
file cabinets. You just put file cabinet on a hand truck and push it in,
You said file cabinet.
Yeah, I mean, you said file cabinets last night, and I was thinking, it really does. There's something about file cabinets and my dad that goes together.
You said
my dad would never, ever rely on a computer to preserve any information whatsoever. That's why you have rooms full of file cabinets like you described from that movie, because people that are that are seriously doing their jobs are not going to just put it on a computer and assume it's going to be there tomorrow. They are going to have a paper copy of everything filed and easily defined with an index. My dad would be horrified at our national security infrastructure being reliant upon computers. It's just one of the things that probably would drive him crazy.
Easy to steal, right? What if our elections were run with paper ballot receipts? Wouldn't that be a concept?
Yeah. Wouldn't that be a concept?
But now I told McDuff I wouldn't bring up the file room scene of the Tommy Lee Jones if he didn't mention it. He said, don't. But in the movie, Yuri Nasenko, KGB, right? He goes, they say Oswald. Okay, you can't type it up because it's not on computer yet. We're going to put it on the video. But he goes, Oswald, that's a name I dealt with 2 years ago in 1962.
Mm-hmm.
Oswald, Yuri Nasenko knows something about Oswald before the assassination. We want him to testify in front of the Warren Commission if he knows what happened, that he was in Russia and what he was doing in Russia, because Nasenko was his handler, right? So they go into this room, John, and when you see the scene, they go into this room and it's full of file cabinets, and they have to go through the lock. They punch through the lock, and one of the guys is an FBI guy, and the other guy is the CIA guy that are working the case. McDuff is one of those two guys. Has to be, because we know McDuff had the files.
Yeah.
In order for the CIA guy to get into the consolidated files, these are consolidated files, he had to go through McDuff.
That's right, because that was the whole point of SACSA, was to pull all the files from all the intelligence agencies and put them into the custody of one person, and that person was my dad.
And the only way McDuff, now this is supposedly, Tommy Lee Jones spoke to an agent and got this story. The only way he would be cued when the FBI guy tells him, I think they just switched FBI and CIA. The only way he would be cued on Lee Harvey Oswald is he goes, Lee Harvey Oswald, right after the assassination. I know that name.
Mm-hmm.
I know that name from 1962 and Nasenko.
Mm-hmm.
So whoever it is knows Nasenko is the handler for Lee Harvey Oswald. And he has access to that file room. I leave it as a question. I'm not making a statement. I leave it as a question.
George, we got a lot of work to do today.
We do. I'll quit. I'm sorry.
No, don't quit.
This is too much fun.
Well, it's fun, and just when I first started with George, the metaphor that hit me, and I leave it with you today is that George supplies the track. He sends the rails out, and he depends on us to trestle under, to put the trestles underneath of it. And I tell you, it is fun. It is exciting, and it's surprising because I hear you say something and I like, what? Are you kidding me? But then you go back and you do the background research and you find that, yep, there's a trestle here, there's a trestle here, there's a trestle here, and you've laid the track correctly, even though you didn't know the background before we started. It's fun, it's amazing, and it's a journey of a lifetime, George Webb.
And I'll just leave everybody this because you can't get the movie. And we'll play the movie some night. But there is a scene, I showed it to John, where the FBI, where he says Nosenko had 4 days with the two FBI's top guy. So we know somebody from the FBI interviewed Nosenko for 4 days, at least 4 days. So I'll just leave that out there. I showed it to John. John saw it in the movie.
Yep. So
we know it's there. And then the other scene later on with the FBI guy standing in front of the Jefferson Memorial says to the CIA guy, which is it? Nosenko is the high-level operative that knows everything about the second directorate and Oswald, or else he is a low-level lieutenant colonel where you guys demoted him to, or now he's a peon nobody that we don't have to worry about. You know, which message do you want me to take back? There it is. Why don't you play that, Andy, just so people know what I'm talking about? Which is it? The FBI guy's saying, which is it? You guys that change your story before Kennedy dies to after Kennedy dies. He's now no longer important after Kennedy dies, but before we flew him from Moscow. Here you go.
The CIA.
You'll be counterintelligence officer, first division.
The KGB.
I give you plenty good stuff. I'm
The lie, when you know it's a lie, can be as revealing as the truth.
That's Angleton.
that guy with the big glasses, that's Angleton.
Yeah.
He realizes what he's bringing back.
If he was low level, why did
Telling me
Helms
something
fly?
about Lee, Harvey, Oswald.
sure.
And the answers.
There they are in the file room, John.
Yeah. Yep.
I know.
That looks like it. It would be right, yeah.
No, we know he's reliable.
You don't know that. Yes, we do.
And the lies.
Tell us your name and rank.
My name is Yuri Ivanovich Nastenko, and I'm Lieutenant Colonel KGB.
Liar!
Nosenko is a highly skilled and motivated KGB officer.
This man is sent here to destroy me. We have to dispose of this case.
Can't release him. The consequences would be devastating.
Are you out of your mind? You had your chance. You got nowhere. Nothing was conclusive. What do you want? A telephone call from the Kremlin?
Tommy Lee Jones stars in Yuri Nosenko, KGB.
There we go.
All right, there's your teaser.
All right, folks.
All right, let's wrap it up, George. We're going to get a little something to eat around here and then get to work with those files. All right.